What is good, YouTube? In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to abuse aim assist in Battlefield 6. What I mean by that is I'm going to show you, of course, the correct settings to have, things you can do in game to make sure your aim assist is working properly, and just some other general tips and tricks that are going to help you land more shots. So we're going to be starting right out here in the firing range just to go over a few things. And of course, I have my beautiful SOR, aka the SCAR. This is a wonderful AR to be using, and one thing that you guys have to be able to do is be able to center properly, center on the target here. You can see my aim assist actually feels pretty dang sticky right there. Like, it's kind of harder to come off target. It's not as much like a giant ball or circle around, you know, the target. It only really slows down immediately when you're on them. So being able to do snap from target to target is hugely beneficial. I'll show you guys how I can do that here. So first we got that target. Oh, we've ran out of ammo for that very last one, but still doesn't really matter. I mean, you guys get the point. Snapping from target to target is hugely beneficial. It makes all the difference in the world having the correct settings in order to be able to do something like that. So in order for me to really help you with your aim assist, I want to make sure that your settings are dialed in properly, as I know everyone and their mom has spent an incredible amount of time in the settings tab, myself included. This game's a little bit ridiculous, so let's get in here. Of course, I am controller on PC. I'm just going to be using my mouse to go through some of these settings just to show you some of this stuff. So we're not really going to get into the custom controller mapping, as that is something you can totally do, and everyone's going to have something a little bit different. But I'll get into a couple of things here that will, actually a lot more than a couple of things, that'll make a large difference. So let's get in here to some of these settings and show you what you should be using. So your infantry aim sensitivity, I personally find this really quite nice to be on around a 45. This is something that it allows me to be slow and tactile enough, but it's also not too slow to the point where I actually just can't look around. I find that to be a really nice sense. The absolute max I do is maybe I'd bump this up to like a 50. I feel like I want to change that, but otherwise I think that is perfect. Next up here is the field of view. This won't necessarily have a giant impact on your aim, but when you think about it, when you go from 120 down to, let's say, 85, that's basically you're going from way out here to zooming way in here. And what that does is that allows you to see less of your screen. That gives you more visual recoil because it's more zoomed in, so the smaller movements on 120 are enlarged because you're on 85 FOV. So what this does is when you have it at a larger FOV, let's say like the max 120, it allows you to feel like you have less visual recoil, which in turn can help you hit more shots because you feel like you're more accurate. It's easier to see things, though it may not work the best if you're on like a big TV sitting far away, maybe playing like 100, 110. But if you're sitting like, you know, at a desk, a monitor setup, 120 is definitely a move. Jumping on down in here, you can leave your vertical aim ratio at 56. As you can see, there's no sort of like square or box by it, so I did not mess with that. And then your uniform infantry aiming, you may have to turn this off to select a specific setting, or you will have to, so I'll show you guys that in just a second. Next out here, though, is your zoom sensitivity coefficient. Mine's currently on a 70. I did turn this all the way down to a 0, but I felt like I was still a little bit too inaccurate. I was starting to overcorrect, and this kind of helped slow me down a little bit from that 0 to like that 70. So I like that. I might still mess with this a little bit, but otherwise you want to have that right about there. Your infantry aim assist slow down, infantry aim assist zoom snap. You want this all to be at 100. No reason at all to be having these lower than 100. You want this to be right there. That allows your aim assist to kick in to the strongest it possibly can. Trust me, Battlefield, you definitely need it. These guns need to be able to have a little bit of that aim assist. I mean, this game can really penalize you for not aiming properly. My infantry aim input curve I found to be the absolute best right now is Battlefield 3. I know some people like, you know, Battlefield, I think Battlefield 5 or Battlefield 1 and 4. I really like Battlefield 3. I don't know all the exact nuances between all the different ones. I will say, however, if you use the exact settings and go from Battlefield 3 to Battlefield Bad Company 2, your game feels significantly more slow and blocky. Like, you feel a lot more cumbersome and less agile. It's just the way Bad Company 2 was made and how it feels. You go back and play the game, which I have in the last year or so, you will notice like it feels pretty one-to-one. So I'd recommend you go for more Battlefield 3 or the newer gen ones, just that way so you can have a better infantry aim input curve. We don't need to be slowed down anymore, because this will really slow you down. Trust me on that one. Now we're gonna go on down in here, by the way, to our stick input acceleration presets. I just keep this on Battlefield 4, 3, and Battlefield Bad Company, and then my aiming left and right acceleration is gonna be at a 0. Now in the movement tab, we're gonna be looking at our infantry sprint. This is just gonna be on toggle. There's no reason to have this on hold. That doesn't make sense. You don't want to be holding in on your controller in order for that to kick in. That just doesn't make sense. Double tap forward to sprint. It can be on sprint. It could be on auto sprint. It doesn't really matter. I have it on sprint. I might just change it over to auto sprint, but nonetheless, it's still going to be perfectly fine. I would just recommend to go for one of the two. You definitely don't want to have that off. That just doesn't make sense. So just go for sprint or auto sprint. Your sprint probably should just be on your left analog stick. That's very easy to click in. So that's the way I have it set for mine. Crouch toggle sprint should be on stand. Vault over sprint should be on, and slide, you can have that to basically be whatever. I tend to play on more of a tactical layout from Call of Duty, which means that my right stick, I'm gonna push into crouch, go prone. I'm gonna use basically my circle or my B button on my controller to melee. So I find that to be fine. Also, I have a scuff controller, which has paddles on the back, which take the place of my face buttons largely. So it doesn't matter too much, but I'd still say regardless, having that on the right stick does help you out. It's always better to be able to go prone or hold something to go prone as opposed to having to take your thumb off and put it on a different, button. It doesn't really make as much sense. Crouch slide, you can just leave this on all. Now down in here in the zoom tab, we're going to be looking at the infantry weapon zoom. Of course, you want this to be on hold. Zoom is going to be on LB for me. Basically, that is my top left bumper. I prefer to be on the top bumpers instead of the bottom triggers. For me, it feels more natural. I grew up on PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2. So I've been playing, Call of Duty and Battlefield and anything that's been a shooter on the top, bumpers instead of the bottom triggers for a long time. So I try to do that whenever possible. Steady scope, you want this to be on hold, and your steady scope can be really nice to be able to have this binded to your right stick. Now when you're zooming in, like, you just hold in on that. That's very simple. I like that quite a bit. Infantry zoom sensitivity, mine's going to be at an 80. Basically, when you mess with this, it says it adjusts your sensitivity of your infantry weapon aim zoom. This is just going to help you out. I prefer to have this, I think the base is 100. I prefer to have it down to an 80 just to slow me down a little bit more. It helps me not overcorrect as much. That is very nice. Now here's the setting that is going to be grayed out, and you may see this as turned on. And I'm going to show you guys, this is a very nice trick, and it will make the difference in your settings. Now, in order to get this to not be grayed out so we can actually toggle it, because it will make a massive difference, we're going to go up in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to go look for the one of the very first settings, which is going to be uniform infantry aiming. What we're going to do is turn this off. And so that way we can go down in here and we can actually have the ability to turn the transition sensitivity smoothing from on to off. Then you're going to go back up here, of course, make sure you turn that on so you have that setting right there, and it will stay in the off position. I'm telling you guys this right now, that simple setting right there can make all the difference in the world in your aiming. But going on down here a little bit further, I actually have my custom kind of sensitivity per zoom a little bit. So that way, like, I can use my 1 through essentially my 4 times scopes, put this 80 sort of sensitivity. And then when I get down to something that's going to be farther out, like, 4.5, 5 to 10 times, I don't necessarily want that same sensitivity to be able to jerk the crosshair around. So I lower that a little bit more. It's going to help me hit more shots at range, as being able to move around a larger zoom optic can be very detrimental if it's very easy to be able to move around. Like, you want it to be a little bit harder so you come off target a little bit less. And honestly, the rest of the stuff down here in the infantry settings tab really don't have to mess with, besides the interact and reload. You want this to be on tap to reload and hold to interact. When you, of course, play the battle royale, when that comes out, you're probably going to have to flip that around. I assume there'll be some different settings for that, but overall, this is going to be great for overall multiplayer, and we don't have to go down here and adjust any of this other stuff. As you can see, it has not been messed with me by at all, because you don't need to. The other thing that's going to make a massive difference, apart from having maybe some custom button settings that'll be tailored to your own personal liking, that's why it says custom and stuff like that. I'm not going to go in here to really show you guys exactly what to do, but I will show you guys a couple of things that I just happen to have. Something that I've done is, of course, I've gone in here and changed my fire and my zoom, of course, to my top bumpers. My melee, I changed that over to my B button, of course, because this shows up as Xbox buttons. And honestly, that's really about it. Of course, steady scope is going to be on that sort of right thumbstick. And honestly, I haven't changed really anything besides that, but you can definitely go in here and change some of these things, it can come in very handy. Now back out here in the controller schemes tab, just at the very top, we're going to slide it all the way down to the very bottom. We're going to go down to other, which I'm not sure why controller tuning is way down here, because it's a pretty crucial setting, and we're going to go into the edit tab. So controller vibration, you can have this on, you can have it at 100, it doesn't matter. I have lower rumble packs in my controller, so I personally don't really feel a whole lot. It just feels natural for me to have some sort of haptic feedback in my hand when I'm shooting a gun. It's been like that for me for so many years. I'm playing first-person shooters, so I just kind of have it like that. Of course, your controller left stick and your controller right stick are going to be massively crucial when it comes to having your game feel good and having aim assist feel right and your aim feel right. So you guys will be able to see that my center dead zone and my axial dead zone for both my right stick and my left stick is at a 0. That's just because I prefer to play with a 0-0 dead zone. It is not necessary, but what that does is it allows you to have literal 0 delay from the moment you start moving your stick or to start registering on the game. If you have stick drift, right, then you don't necessarily want to have a 0 dead zone because you're going to be auto moving around. But I'd recommend getting this as low as possible, and then your max input threshold on your left stick, since we are using this to move, we can dial this into a 60. The reason we have it at a 60 is just because we don't need that full 100, the entire, circumference of that stick to get the maximum movement in. We can dial that in, so we only have to hit 60% of the way, so that way we can legitimately have full sprint, full movement at 60% of the stick push, as opposed to needing to go to 100. That is very nice. On the flip side, the max input threshold for the right stick, this should be at 100 because that's what we're aiming with. We don't need to lower our ability to hit shots by taking away area. So we want to make sure we're as accurate as possible. And that means we're going to be having the max input threshold set at 100. Down here, the only reason I have these dead zones is because this controller has essentially mouse click triggers. So they're so sensitive, sometimes they click in. So for me, having a dead zone on these doesn't do anything. And you can just keep everything at like a 0 and a 0, and then keep this at 100 and 100. That doesn't matter. Of course, now that you have all those settings set up, go into the firing range, check some stuff out, see kind of what works best for you. You're gonna have to maybe alter a few different things, but I mean, you should be able to have very sticky aim. And of course, you can kind of mess with a few different things in that time and see, hey, I like one thing, I like a different thing. Maybe this needs to be a little bit faster, a little bit slower. This right here should make your aim feel very sticky, and it should not be coming off target very easily. It will happen, but this should help you out a lot. That's all I got for you guys here today. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, notifications turned on, check out this other video on screen, and I'll see you all next time.